So today we're going to be adding and subtracting polynomials. And again, this is some stuff we've done this year. It's basically putting together like terms. Okay? So we're just going to make sure that we understand, like terms are variables. They have to be the same variables, exact same variables, and all the variables have to have the exact same exponents. And as long as two terms have the exact same variables and the exact same exponents, then you can add those two terms together. And by adding them, we mean you take their coefficients, the numbers in front of them, and you add them or subtract them, whatever it tells you to do. You do not change the variables when you're adding and subtracting. If something was x squared and you're adding it to another x squared, it stays an x squared. If I'm taking an xy and I'm adding it to another xy, it stays an xy. The only thing that changes is we add or subtract their coefficients, their numbers in front of them. There's a couple of different methods that people like to use, and I don't care which you use. I'm going to show you two of them, and you can choose whichever you happen to like the best. The first one I kind of call hunting and gathering, or we'll call it gathering for our purposes. You don't have to actually call any method by any particular name. This is just what I call it. And if you're using gathering, that means that we have our problems written side by side on one line of notebook paper. 2x squared plus 5x minus 7 plus 5x squared minus 3x plus 2. Okay? And so if I'm going to use the gathering method and I'm putting like terms together, the first thing I want to do is identify the first term. I have an x squared here. So I look over here to see if there's any more x squareds. And in fact, there is 1x squared. So this is 2x squared plus 5x squared. 2 plus 5 would give me 7x squareds. So that gets the x squareds out of the way. Next, I would go through and say, okay, this is an x. I need to see if there's any other x's, and sure enough, there's another x here. 5x plus negative 3x. The signs have to stay with the numbers. So this is positive 5x plus negative 3x. Guys, don't be afraid to use a calculator if you're worried about negatives messing you up. 5 plus negative 3 is 2x. Positive 2x. Okay? So 5 plus negative 3 is positive 2, so plus 2. And these were x's, so plus 2x. So that gets the x's out of the way. Last but definitely not least, we have minus 7. And here's a 2. These are the constants, the numbers without a variable. They're like terms. Negative 7 plus 2. Negative 7 plus 2 is negative 5. So I'm going to write minus 5. Negative 5. If it had been positive 5, I would have put plus 5. It is okay if you get negative 5. If you put plus negative 5, that's the same thing as minus 5. But you kind of want to get into the habit of just knowing that negative means that it's minus 5. So this would be our final answer. 7x squared plus 2x minus 5. Do be aware, proper grammar, basically, correct form for writing polynomials is from highest exponent to lowest exponent, or no exponent. So notice I started with x squared, then it was x to the first, then it was no x. Okay? So that is proper grammar for polynomials. So this is the gathering method. The alternative to that is the stacking method. Okay? So usually they'll give you the problem in the same form. Alright? But by the stacking method, what I do is I take, let's say we have the problem, 6x squared plus 3x plus 8 plus 2x squared minus 6. Alright? For the stacking method, I take the first polynomial and I write it on the top, 6x squared plus 3x plus 8. And then I write the second polynomial directly under it, but I line up the like terms. So 2x squared would go under the other x squared, and minus 6 would go under the other constant. And we just add them like we do, when we were adding long numbers in elementary school. Now that we have stacked our like terms, we know exactly what has to get added to each other or subtracted from each other. So 6 plus 2 is going to give me 8x squared. 3x doesn't have anything here. Anytime you don't have anything, that's just a big fat 0. So 3x plus 0 is still going to be just 3x. 8 minus 6 is positive 2. And so we just stack them right on top of each other, and we can add them that way. They both do the exact same thing. One way is not more right than the other way. It is all personal preference. Advantages to the different ones. The advantage of this one is not rewriting the problem, or if you like having everything on one line on your paper, this could be one method. Disadvantages of it is on longer polynomials, it is easy to skip some term. It's easy to miss a term. And so some students fall into that common mistake. The stacking method, disadvantages are you do rewrite the problem. So even if they gave it to you this way, you rewrite it as stacked. But advantages are it's pretty much impossible to miss a term, because you've written them all right on top of each other. You know where all the like terms are. They line right up with each other. So it's pretty much impossible to miss a term, even in the longer ones. So, you know, each have their advantages, each have their disadvantages. You just have to choose which you prefer. Subtraction uses the same two methods. But the problem with subtraction is we are subtracting a whole polynomial. And so there is a pitfall that we fall into in that students forget to distribute the subtraction. You're not just subtracting the first term, you're subtracting all of the terms. And so, for example, negative 2x squared plus 8x plus 10 minus 6x squared plus 3x minus 8. Okay? This subtraction means everything in this polynomial is being subtracted. And we know that when we have things like minus and negative, it changes it to plus a positive. And that gives students a hard time. All the mistakes made with subtracting polynomials have to do with sign problems. People subtracting when they should have added, or forgetting a sign, or forgetting to change a minus and negative to a plus a positive. It always has sign issues. So the easiest way to get rid of sign issues is to change subtraction to adding the opposite. Okay? We're going to change subtraction to add the opposite. So what I'm going to do very first, and this is really good if you're using the stacking method anyway, you're going to have to rewrite it anyway, so you might as well do it. But the idea is to change this to a plus sign and change the signs of everything in here. So minus this polynomial is the same thing as plus negative 6x squared minus 3x plus 8. So you can change the polynomial and do it with the gathering method. Or if you prefer the stacking method, like I said, you're going to have to rewrite it for the stacking method anyway, you might as well do this. So we would end up with negative 2x squared plus 8x plus 10. And now we're going to be adding negative 6x squared minus 3x plus 8. And so we just go through, and now we're adding. Okay, we've changed the subtraction to adding the opposite. We made everything the opposite sign that it was. And we just add. Negative 2 plus negative 6 is negative 8x squared. 8 minus 3 is positive 5x, and 10 plus 8 is 18. And that would be our subtraction. We could have done the same thing up here with stacking, or with gathering. Negative 2 and negative 6, 8 and negative 3, 10 and positive 8. So the key to subtraction is to change it to addition. Make it adding the opposite, but you do have to change all of the signs in here.